Hey folks, how you doing? It's me, Big Ugly Jim. If you're watching this on YouTube, like, subscribe, all the kind of things that people can do. So I'm going to start talking about this, how I got through the things that I went through in my life. So this obviously will be a little bit personal, but it's I think worthwhile to talk about. I don't think guys talk about this kind of stuff enough, which is really unfortunate. What my seeing what my friends are going through right now is a little bit heartbreaking. I've been seeing a lot of people I care about and love who are going through some hard times, and that sucks. That's all there is to it. So I wanted to sort of just give my 2 cents. So I went through a divorce. To sort of set the stage, it wasn't an unhappy marriage in the like there was no violence, there was no you know basically it was an unloving marriage, which is I think a lot harder to recognize that it's a problem. If my then wife had punched me or something, I would have been like, this is not okay. That's not what I went through at all. Instead, it was a constant state of our being sort of social and polite, but not being happy, and certainly a lot of manipulation. I think it's fair to say on both sides. I don't want to paint myself as the victim in the situation, but also it's my story, so I was fucking victim. The marriage was, I got married right out of high school, which is always a good idea, definitely. And the marriage, worked. It wasn't awful. We were married for 14 years, and that's right. I'm really old, in case you haven't figured that out, despite my youthful good looks. We were married 14 years. We had 4 children. A good chunk of that time was not a happy marriage. How did we get there? Well, you're married. You don't have a whole lot of choice. You just kind of, get through. And that's what I did. I bought into the idea that, I had made a commitment and that it was for life. And I just had to suck up all the bad things that came with that. And I'm sure, she had the same perspective. And there was a lot of bad things. I filled my life with other stuff to avoid being around for the things that were going on in the marriage. And it was a very dark time, but I knew I was going to be fine. And eventually, I kind of figured out that I wasn't going to be fine. She used the word divorce as a threat one day, and not in a again, I'm not like, that mean spirited jerk. Like, she used the word divorce as a threat, and we were having a problem based on a miscommunication and a misunderstanding. And I said, basically, like, I'm not doing this. I will fix this one time, but I'm not living under the threat of divorce. That's just a thing. So because it was a miscommunication, I explained, we worked through the conversation, and a week later I got an email that said, yeah, we're done. And that was the right thing to do. That was good. Immediately, my response was because at the time my ex-wife was not working. We were living in different cities at that point, so she was entirely financially dependent on me, as were my children who she was raising. So the first thing I said was like, "Hey, listen, nothing needs to change. I will take care of the kids. I will take care of you. You are the person who's got the heavy lifting. I more than took on my share in the financial sense. I didn't want to put the burden on her and more specifically on my kids. So I made the decision that I would pay a giant amount of my income. And what that meant was I was looking at poverty. And the particular poverty I was looking at was going to last a long, long time. So my youngest, when we split up, was 2 years old. And that means I had 16 years of support payments and 16 years of most of my money not going to me. That's life, but it was really fucking hard. And it was honestly downright impossible. And as I'm trying to reestablish my life at that time, the financial burden was so severe. I also had issues with my taxes. I had not, I, I'm a dumbass, and I didn't know that when I became a contractor, my taxes weren't being taken care of in the same way that they were when I was an employee. I didn't know what I was agreeing to when I agreed to become a contractor. And several years went by before I found out, and I was like, oh shit, I have not got a way to deal with this. And suddenly I'm the sole source of support for this, my children and my ex-wife, and I have to keep the lights on for me. And like, so I put everything off, and I just tried to keep my nose down. And eventually that didn't work. And Revenue Canada found me, and I'll explain later that I've, been open and honest with them, and we're good. But at the time, I'm telling you this to paint the picture, because it was a bloody scary time. On top of that, I felt fat and ugly. I felt broken. And I was terrified that I was never going to be someone that somebody could love. And I've talked a little bit in the past on these videos about like the weird math that I did to figure out what my chances of ever finding love again were, and those chances were not awesome. And I panicked. I lived in a state of real self-hate, self-recrimination, and panic. And it was a terrible way to live. So financially, I was screwed. I was living, in basement suites and with friends kind of thing. And I had, a decade and a half ahead of me of this being my life. And it was legitimately terrifying. And then, of course, add to that, I'm hiding from the tax man because, at any moment, I know I owe this money. And I know at that point, I'm like, fuck, I have to deal with this, but I just don't know how I'm going to. And you get through this thing where you start going like, well, you know what, maybe it will get better. Maybe everything will be fine in time. And no, it wasn't. Like anything, it just builds and builds and builds. The biggest fears I had, though, were the whole thing about being unlovable and knowing that my kids were being raised in a whole different province and that they may not know me. They may not want to know me. They may not ever want to have a relationship with me. And I said, and very much meant, my kids don't owe me a goddamn thing, and including a relationship. I have my responsibilities, and I can hope that they will want to have a relationship with me. But they don't owe that to me. And all of my kids were very young when that marriage ended. And I had legitimate fear that I would never know them properly. So what did I do? Really, I put my head down. I just, I have to get through this. There's no other option. I just have to fucking move forward and deal with it. And when all the pain came, I went to therapy. Therapy was huge for me. There's a few of my friends that I've talked to privately when I've seen them going through stuff. But I'll tell you this much, that I was, and maybe I'm a product of my age, maybe, millennials and Zoomers are in a better place than I was, but I didn't have a goddamn skill to my name when it came to dealing with the way that the world was and the way that I was in the world. I felt at the time, prior to the divorce, I felt like I was very well put together. I'm smart. I'm not terribly emotional, but I have my emotions and I can sort of, manage them and stuff. I was like, yeah, I'm good. I've got this. My ex-wife suggesting, but she contacted me one day and was like, you should go to a therapist. I think you have arrested development, which I did not have arrested development. What I had was I was firmly convinced that I was well put together and didn't need to do any better. What I had was stagnation, and it was self-imposed. There was no critical incident that made me a man child or anything like that. But I went to a therapist, and it was terrible. The therapist I went and saw, I sat down, and it was right in the heart of I have just become an atheist. It was right in the heart of that. I sat down, and I was like, so here's the thing. I am an atheist, and I'm super willing to put in the work, but if the work is that I need to pray on things or I need to, turn my problems over to God or any of that shit, like it's going to fall on deaf ears. Sorry. And the person was like, no, 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 no. I totally get that. That's fine. Well, and she gave me a book to read and stuff. And I got a weird vibe. And at the end of the conversation, or no, it was when I said that, she had said, I just want to clarify, like, I am a very strong, proud Christian. I won't allow that to affect our professional relationship. But this is a thing about me, and does that concern you? And I said, as long as it doesn't spill over into, these sessions, that's fine. Like, if that works for you, then great. So the next time I went for a therapist appointment, the first thing she does is she goes, okay, I wanted to talk about something, right off the bat. Something you said last week. And I was like, oh no, here it comes. She goes, now you don't believe in God. And it literally was me paying a stranger a bunch of money for an hour to justify the fact that I didn't feel that there was a God in heaven. So that was a fun conversation. Super good, super exciting. Very happy I paid money for that. Anyways, that cemented in my head that I was good and didn't need therapy. Not the case. Therapy was massively transformative for me, and I didn't properly find my way into therapy until several years later when I had another breakup. That was another very important relationship in my life, and there was so much emotional hurt and everything. I was like, fuck it, I'm going to therapy. And I did, and it was amazing and very positive. So that's the number one thing that I did to get through those impossible times was therapy. There's a song by Les Miserables it starts off with them just screaming, "We don't dream anymore. We don't dream anymore. Go!" Fucking great song. That's another coping technique I did. I literally stopped myself from dreaming because I was in a place where I had like a decade and a half ahead of me of poverty, and dreams just were gonna hurt. So I actively stopped. Now that sounds like terrible advice. I think that what it was actually a really positive thing, and it was simply, you hear idiots on the internet talk about gratitude. I was starting to hit a place where I was actually grateful for the circumstances I was in, which is weird. But I was grateful because that marriage had caused me a lot of pain that I didn't realize at the time even. It's the old frog in the boiling water. As the water gets hotter, the frog is just like, boy, something's weird. I don't know what's up, but this sucks. And then when all of a sudden I wasn't in that hot water, I was like, that water was fucking hot. I don't know when that happened, but that fucking happened. I was trying to explore that gratitude. And anytime, because of the circumstance I was in, anytime I thought, people would be like, you should go on vacation. I haven't been on a vacation in a very long time. The last time I went on vacation, a friend of mine actually paid for it. Thank you, Wes. But yeah, I literally haven't had more than a long weekend in a long fucking time. And that's okay because I hit my stride with being like, I was grateful that I could fulfill my opportunity or my responsibilities to my kids. I was grateful that I had the luxury of pushing my way through this. I focused on that part of things instead of getting wistful about, oh, wouldn't it be nice to be on a Cuban beach with a band playing in the distance, wafting over the ocean into my ears while a beautiful woman kisses me right there. Like, yeah, that would be fucking awesome. But that wasn't real for me. What was real was my life, and I could focus on it as I'd better just suck it up and suffer, or I could focus on it as I'm doing what I gotta do. And yeah, it sucks, but I will get through this. And I will find that eventually these things can happen. Eventually, I'll have vacations again. Eventually, I'll have a dentist. Life will be okay. That was how I focused on things, and it was super fucking necessary. So not dreaming sounds weird, but I assure you it was necessary. In those hardest of moments, the dreaming piece was like the worst thing I could do because it just drove home all of the impossibility that I felt. And then I had a bunch of what I refer to, because I said I'm just putting my head down and going forward. You ever do that when you're a kid? You're like digging a tunnel in the snow, or like, making a path or whatever, and your head's down, you're doing one of these things with your hands or whatever, and you look up and your tunnel's all fucking all over the place. And if you poke your head up, you can see where you're going and course correct. And I had several of these over the time as I would look up and see and figure out what was going on. I'm not going to go into details. I've talked about the first time I had sex post divorce a few times on this channel, which is a weird thing for me to have a conversation about. But that was a huge moment where, again, I had this terrible fear that I was unlovable and unwantable. And then someone, I wouldn't say they loved me, but they wanted me, at least for a little while. That moment was, I mean, it wasn't an important moment. Our beautiful coitus did not, make the angels sing. It was not a relationship. It was literally just I had sex with a girl. And it took all that nonsense out of my head and made me go, wait a second. I'm not unlovable. I'm not unwantable. I'm going to be all right. And another big point for me was when my therapist that I finally got, the good therapist, basically said to me, like, okay, we don't need to have you come in anymore. You're good. That doesn't mean I'm good. It means I'm not super broken anymore. But when I started with those therapy sessions, I didn't know my ass from a tea kettle. And some of the things, like, I had to ask about, like, how do you jealousy? How do you get through being in the same room as the person that you love that does, you can't be with anymore? I had so many what I think are super fucking basic questions that I had no idea what I was doing. And it wasn't long before I had this therapist literally say to me, like, dude, you got some tools now. You're gonna be okay. Come back if bad things happen. But you got this. And I had realized how stagnant I had been. I finally had made that realization just before going to therapy. And to hear a therapist say, like, you're not out of the woods, but you're not gonna be on fire. That was a big thing for me. Another important time, believe it or not, I mentioned earlier, was when the tax man caught up with me. Terrifying. I got a phone call and I answered it, and it was Revenue Canada, and I was like, oh fuck. Now what? I have dodged this. I have tried to hide. I felt horrible about that. It's important for you to understand. That was not something I was doing out of, haha, screw the tax man. That was something I was doing out of, like, I don't know how to get out of this. And for the record, I'm still in that. I still owe the tax man a whole pile of money. But what happened was, tax man called me and was, very menacing on the phone. And I said, okay, here's here's my situation. I'm just going to put it all on the table. And I laid it out, and tax man was like, well, what are you going to do about it? And I was like, I have no idea, homeboy. And what we decided was I could make token payments. They were not going to be awesome payments. It was not really going to do much of anything to what I owed, but it was something. Part of the issue was I realized I had one piece of power in the situation, and that is I could declare bankruptcy. I don't want to do that, but anytime the conversations with the various people from Revenue Canada that I've had to deal with have gone uncomfortably, I have that in my back pocket. I can say, like, look, I can declare bankruptcy and this all goes away. Not that I'm threatening to do that. I'm using it as an example of how I'm here to play ball, because I've been living with this and making, at this point, less than token payments, but certainly not paying off the debt in 27 days like they, I'm sure, would love. But I'm doing the thing I need to do because I owe this money. I recognize that I owe this money, and I'm doing everything I can to deal with this. And either you let me do that, or I just declare bankruptcy and you get what, like my total net worth of fuck all. You can have all fuck all of it. That's yours. My gift to you. And that is actually an interesting feeling, because again, I have no desire to do that. I for various reasons. I don't want to, all the fuckery that comes with being bankrupt, but also this is money that I owe. I live in this country. I utilize public services and public this and that and the other, and I do feel that it is my responsibility to pay my way. I wound up in a very terrible situation, but I've also found ways to make my way through that. So I don't want to declare bankruptcy, and I've never threatened to declare bankruptcy as a gambling chip. But I certainly have said, hey, these are your choices. Either you work with me and we get to the place where everyone's happy, or you don't. And I don't have a choice but to declare bankruptcy. So that's what I will do. And surprisingly, they've actually been pretty good about that. But that moment was actually really transformative too, in the sense that it made me realize that as much as I was under a huge financial burden, I could get through it. Another big thing was in terms of my valuing of myself, and I hate saying it this way. I don't derive personal value from how much companies want to make off of me and how much money they want to pay me to do the work I do. I have always tried to divorce myself from me as a human being versus me as a cog in a machine. And I do that because I watched my father, who was a teacher, when he went into retirement, his entire identity disappeared on him. And it was traumatic and awful for him. And I felt genuinely bad for him. And I was like, that's fucked. I don't ever want to do that. So I ended up, I was working for an oil and gas company. And I was paid essentially as little as they could. There, for the role that I currently do, I was working in that company, and there was one person who made less than me, and he made substantially less than me. And that was because we were both, he had come up from the service desk, and basically they gave him like a $5 an hour raise to be a business analyst, which is ridiculous. And that's the only way there was somebody who was paid less than me. All of the other people who did the same job as me made like $30, $40 an hour more than I did. Because of that, I felt like I didn't have a lot of options and I was stuck. And, I don't look corporate. I don't know if you can tell, right? Wearing my X-Men shirt, tattoos. I didn't have the stupid mohawk thing at the time. I was completely shaved. But I certainly don't look like the guy who works in a energy industry and does energy things. And I felt this sense of impending horror that I was, I wasn't worth or not worth. I knew I was worth a lot more, but that no one would pay that money. And then I wound up, the guy who I was working with who made less than I did switched companies and then brought me with him. And it was like half again of my wage suddenly coming in. So that was awesome. Also allowed me to deal with some of the tax shit and allowed me to like breathe a little bit easier and to recognize that I was being exploited by a company rather than I wasn't someone that people would pay that money for. I legit was someone they would pay that money for. They just knew they didn't have to because they were assholes. Haha, screw you, large faceless organization. And one that was a real strange eye opener was the point where I realized I needed to start thinking about my future again. Because again, head down, move forward, don't fucking care. After my other big relationship had ended, I wound up living at Keith Morrison's house. For those of you that know me, you probably know my time playing in the Keith Morrison band. Keith was a good friend and a wonderful help to me at that point. He let me crash at his place until I could, get my feet under me. And I had a day where I was like, I didn't have any money, but I had to go to the mall to get, I think it was a battery for my phone or some stupid thing. And I was like, I'm going to go and I'm going to wander around the mall. I'm going to make a list of things that I want. And I wandered around Market Mall, which is a huge ass mall. And my list was pots, pans, cutlery. And I was on the bus going back to Keith's house. I'm looking at this going, what the fuck is wrong with me? How is it? Like, I'm not a commercial consumer guy, but come on, there's gotta be things I want to, have and experience and stuff. And it made me realize that I was in a place now where I could, because I was at that point about halfway through the long haul of support payments and all of that stuff. And so there was an opportunity for me to think about the future. And that's when that started. I started to think about, like, where would I want to go if I could ever have a vacation? What would I want to do if I had extra money? How many teeth could I have in my mouth? Things like that. And the most important moment is the one that I haven't addressed yet, which was my kids moving in with me. My youngest daughter moved in with me when she was 13. And that was a very difficult situation because she was a very difficult 13. And add to that, I hadn't been a full-time dad in, 6 or 7 years. And she was going through some stuff, some real stuff. And she lived with me for a year. We got this opportunity. And then she moved back to live with her mom again, and things went dire. And she's doing great now, but there was some times we were planning myself and the woman I was in a relationship with at the time, we're talking about, like, what would a funeral look like? So it was a tough time, but I was so grateful for that year of having her in my life, and that this was something unexpected. And then a few years later, my eldest called me and said that they were wanting to move to Calgary when they turned 18, and would they be able to move to live with me? And I was like, fuck yeah, I'll take you up on that. And they did, and like a month later, my eldest son was living with me, and my ex-wife and my other son were now living in Calgary. And suddenly I had this opportunity to have a relationship, like an in-person actual relationship with all of my kids. And that was unexpected and has been fantastic. Now, not everyone's going to have that experience, but for me, that was a huge transformation, and I'm grateful for it. So talking about how I got through all the impossible it really boiled down to putting my head down and pressing forward, occasionally poking my head up and trying to be grateful for And the real gratitude, not that bullshit Christian sentiment gratitude of like, oh, you have to have an attitude of gratitude. Here's the reason for the season. Why the fuck do they rhyme everything? God. I had to find the things that made all the bits and pieces of my life work and be grateful for them. I had to look at the way that I viewed all of the things around me and try to do it as positively as I could. That was a long and impossible process, but it was a necessary one. And it's not like I woke up one day and like made a list of all the ways I see the world and like, okay, that one's fixed. Work on this one now. It was step at a time, and I didn't know I was doing it. But when I got there, it was fucking important. And I genuinely want, like I said, I've seen 2 or 3 of my friends are going through a lot right now. And I hope that maybe something I say can help you guys. Again, the biggest thing is therapy. So where am I at today? Well, I'm not done with the support payments. I'm not done with the tax man. Both of those are getting better. I have a relationship with all of my kids. Turns out I'm not unwantable and unlovable. There are people who want to have me around in their lives as a friend, as a musician, as a lover, as a bunch of things. And it turns out that all the things that felt so impossible aren't. And now I dream. I dream about going places and doing things and having all of the teeth that are supposed to be there and what I would do. When people say, like, what would you do if you had $1 million? If you won the lottery and got $1 million or whatever. My answer was like always, I don't know, get my teeth fixed. Because I had nothing else. Especially when I was working 2 jobs. A 9-to-5 day job, full-time hours, and then Fridays and Saturday nights bouncing or bartending, right? Who's got time to dream? I was intentional. I was very intentional. But today I dream. I dream about visiting Cuba. I'm actually doing Duolingo because I want to eventually be able to consider moving to Portugal. I randomly picked Portugal just because I saw a thing on Anthony Bourdain, and probably not the best reason to move anywhere, but I love fado music. I've developed a love for fado music, and that's from Portugal, so obviously I should live in Portugal. Duh. The reality is that today I'm okay. And, there's bad days, there's good days, blah, 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 blah. But I'm okay. And to my friends that are struggling, especially, no offense to the ladies, but especially the guys, we can get through all these things. And we will get through all these things. And, I'm here. Depending on if I like you or not. But if I like you, I'm here. And if I don't, sorry, that's probably unfortunate to hear. Fucking love you, man. Your story's just beginning. Hell yeah, it is. That's the dream part. I had a shitty start. Actually, I had a great start if you count the first 18 years. And then I had a shitty middle section where things didn't go quite right. And now I'm doing good. Now I have nothing but opportunity and nothing I'm not without my struggles, and I got a long way to go before I'm all the way through. But I know I'm getting there, and I know that my people that are struggling, you guys are going to be here too. So that was the big thing I wanted to talk about, the whole impossibility and everything. Anyways, if you liked the video, subscribe, all that stuff. Huge special thanks goes to my one and only patron on Patreon, Mr. Shithead Dave Anderson, a punk rock name if ever I heard one. You too can have all the blissful glee of being a patron if you're so inclined. Either way, I just want to thank you for watching. So, thank you.